What's going on, guys? No Guys here. Welcome back to an exclusive video for Footbin. Now in today's video we're going to go over the 4-2-3-1 custom tactics and instructions. Why is this famous, when this formation is so famous for all players, and why is it heavily used? That it's its versatility. This formation equally is very defensive but also equally attacking. Defensively you're very solid, you defend in a 4-2-3-1. Your cam can sit deeper than other, so for example, if you have, for example, a 4-4-2, you might find you have two strikers up front. You have that gap in midfield. That cam sorts out that gap, sits in front of your two CDMs. But equally, when you attack, you also attack in a 4-striker formation, I like to say, with a cam that almost plays like a centre forward. That's the way I set up my 4-2-3-1. And you can always have a midfielder join the attack. So you're also ready for the counter attack. You defend very stable, and it's good for possession play. It's probably one of the best overall formations to use inside the game, and it's the one that I'd recommend using. The key thing with this formation is doing 1-2s from your left attacking mids to your left backs, trying to create those overloads and trying to force the ball down the wing and then bringing the ball back inside. That's the key, doing all those 1-2s between all your attacking players, using those triangles and using them with your CDMs to bring the ball going forward. So it's a very, very versatile formation. I like to play like a 4-4-1-1. So I think of my 4-2-3-1, a hybrid between the 4-2-3-1 and the 4-4-2. So I like to think it's best of both worlds. So I like to have that cam player, but I like to have him just sitting just behind the striker. And I can always bring that player going forward. So what about the tactics? Now, what I would always recommend is a pretty balanced tactic. So defensive style balanced. Balance is one of the better ones to use, because you actually you're not just passive. The team don't stay there. They keep their shape, but they press a little bit. But if you use drop back, the players don't press for you. And if you use, for example, like constant pressure, you overpress. So balanced is a good medium to use. You can use pressure and heavy touch, which I like to say is balanced, but if your opponent takes a heavy touch, your team will press to win the ball back. But of course, if you use this and you get countered, there's a chance you could concede. So I would say stick with balanced. The width, 45, you naturally have two CDMs anyway, and is naturally, I would say, somewhat of it's a wide formation in theory, but when you defend, the default formation layout is quite narrow anyway. You pack out the middle areas, so you don't have to worry too much about the width. And the depth here at 55, you don't want to have it too low, because if you have it too low, then your team are just going to sit, or your backline will sit there, and your opponent can easily make a pass to the striker and he could shoot. You don't want to give him too much space inside the box, but not equally do you want it to be too high. If it is too high, for example, then your opponent can play the through ball in behind very easily. So you want to create that balance, and I think 55 is a good balance. Again, you can always fine tune these. So if you find, for example, your team is sitting a bit too further back for your style, you can always increase the depth. For the build-up play, I would always recommend long ball. What long ball basically means is getting behind. So for the first 2/3, what I'd always recommend is use L1 or LB triggers. Now, L1 or LB triggers is a feature where you can trigger a player to make a run going forward. But the reason why long ball is so important in this formation is the LAM, the RAM, and the CAM, they don't have a getting behind option like a striker does. So what you're saying to the game is, I want these players and all the players to make runs going forward when I win the ball back. So it's not actually route one, hoof the ball going forward. You just want your players to make those attacking runs, and that is one of the big changes that I would say that can really influence your game style is long ball. I always recommend, especially for newcomers, if you're new to the game, long ball really helps in making your gameplay more attacking. Chance creation is the final third. This one, I'll be honest, is a bit of more of personal preference. I would recommend, personally speaking, forward runs. I think it creates the most attacking opportunities, personally speaking, over direct passing, but equally, they're both good. You might see a lot of pro players use direct passing, and that's the way they like to play their specific play style. But I think for everyone in general, I think generally speaking, forward runs is the better option. To be honest, I veer between it depending on patches, depending on how people defend, how good players are, I change between them. But I'd always recommend forward runs. If you're not sure, I would say just try each one out and see which one you prefer. Maybe play 30 games with one, 30 games with the other, and see which one you prefer. Otherwise, equally, if you're not too sure, you can leave it on balanced. I wouldn't use possession, but I would maybe leave it on balanced. But my recommendation is forward runs. Now, for the width. Now, in the formation, when you're attacking, there's one thing that people never or always seem to misunderstand with the 4-2-3-1. These players are not cams, or they they are technically they're cams. You can see, for example, here they're attacking mids, and they may look like cams in positions, but these guys actually play like wingers. So when you're playing, you want someone here who's got pace, a Dembele, Neymar and Mbappe. You want quick players here. No players like a KDB. You don't really want a KDB on the wing, because you're going to see in the 4-2-3-1 they play like wingers, and that is why I say this formation is more like a 4-4-1-1 as opposed to an actual 4-2-3-1. That is something to note. So just bear that in mind. They're not tucked in as you think. So that is why the width, we left them on 45. So you still defend in a block and you cover the central areas, but you're not too much of a low block, and also equally when you're attacking you're not too restricted. But what I would tell you as a general rule of thumb is try to use one width inside the game. You would see that the game doesn't make your team very, very thin. People always say if you use one width, does it make your team very, very narrow? It doesn't. To keep it more simple, every formation has its own width and depth and their own radius. So that is why changing this won't make that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. But I think 45 is a good amount because your wide players are not too far away. If they're too far away, for example, where the yellow crosses, you might as well use a D-pad tactic, hug the sidelines, which make them wide anyway. So I think, to be honest, 45 is a good medium to use. Players in the box, I left it on 7. Don't forget, this is from when you're in a crossing situation, when you're down the wing, and that is to get the ball inside the box. And these how many players are going to be coming inside the box. I'd recommend 7. I think it's a good take, where you commit players to go be attacking, but not overly attacking. Corners and free kicks, I left them on 1 personally, but if you're not sure, leave these on 3. I leave them on 1 personally because I normally pass and shoot all my free kicks, so there's no real reason for me to actually have these all higher up. And for corners, I normally try to pass it and try to work it inside the box. Now the instructions, as I mentioned, I play this in a 4-4-1-1. Strikers stay central, stay forward, get it behind. I want this because I want my player to be running, making a run in behind. You want a good player here, ideally someone like a Cristiano Ronaldo or an Mbappe or Eusebio. A very good quick attacker is ideally what you do want over here. Stay central because you always want him to stay. You never want your main key striker to be drifting to like a right mid position. Keep him in position, stay forward and get him behind. For the cam, we have him on stay forward. Because we want to play this like a 4-4-1-1. Now, although he's on stay forward, you can always, if you want to, leave him on balanced. I would recommend, though, leaving him on stay forward because for counter-attacks, you have 2 strikers in line together. And this is very important because most people, they play a back 4. You don't want your 2 strikers to be up against your back 4. One just behind the other helps you create that space and helps you counter-attack. Support on crosses, we left that on balanced because sometimes I think the game has a good idea of where to move the ball going forward. Positional freedom, we don't put them on free roam because you always want your cam to be behind your striker. And this is the thing here. I don't actually play a KDB here. I'll play someone that can play as a second striker or a centre forward. Someone like Neymar works very well here. Someone like Pele, someone like Correa. Anyone that's got pretty decent passing that can play behind the striker. Think of this player like a second striker, not as a conventional cam is what I'd recommend. Now for both CDMs, we have them both on cut passing lanes, stay back while attacking and cover center. Cut passing lanes is important because if there's 2 passing lanes, your CDM will naturally drift to go in between them. Very important. And this is why the 4-2-3-1 is used so heavily over like the 4-4-1-1 because it's a natural 4-4-1-1 tactic, but they're not CDMs. And if you try to use a 4-4-1-1, for example, like here, you can't put the instruction cut passing lane on them. So that is just something to note. So with this, I have them both on stay back, cover center. Now, you can always, if you want to, trigger a player going forward with the L1 button, or you can do a 1-2 of them. Or if you want to make a player more attacking, just leave them on balanced. The key thing is have a good stable base first. Play for like 20 games and be like, okay, you know what? Neil suggested, let's say, for example, your playstyle, I suggested 55 depth. You might say, you know what? I'm actually very, very good. I trust myself defensively. So you might want to commit a player going forward by leaving this player on balanced and maybe increasing your depth. The key is establish a good baseline and then just do that minor adjustments for your playstyle. That will give you the extra 10% edge to help prove the formation even more. I would recommend here a pure CDM, a Kante, a Vieira, someone that's got good sprint speed and defensive awareness. Someone that can recover very quickly is what I'd recommend in one position. And alongside him, you can use someone like a KDB, more of a box-to-box player. I use Valverde because he's also very defensive, and he can also play as a box-to-box player. So if you want, you can use someone like a Marquisio is actually very, very good. Someone who's a box-to-box player works well. I personally like two defensive players and one player that's defensive but can also play that box-to-box role. Sometimes I may alternatively use Vazquez here as well. Now for the defensive line for both the centre-backs, stay back for both the centre-backs. Goalkeeper left them on balanced. The left back and right back, we just left them on stay back while attacking. Again, like I said with the CDM, you can always trigger those players forward, but it's always better to maintain defensive stability first and then improve your attack after, because you don't want, the last thing you want is, for example, these players to go forward. You have two centre backs, your opponent's got two strikers, or they're playing three strikers and like in a 4-2-3-1. They may have, for example, 4 players on stay forward, or like 4-1-2-1-2, and then you can easily concede goals. So establish that good baseline first. The key thing with this formation is doing those 1-2s as I mentioned. Use your lamb and your ram and do 1-2s back to your right back. That will create that overload, and then you can make a pass down the wing, or you can make a pass into the middle when you have the ball with your left back and right back. That is one of the key uses of this formation, and that is one of the key things that everyone always forgets. The second thing is doing these 1-2s. The 1-2s are the most important thing. There's loads of triangles in this gameplay, and there's loads of triangles in this formation. Use them to your advantage. Again, you can always trigger a player forward if you need to have more support, but generally speaking, it's a very, very good formation. And also note that these players are wingers, so if you have the ball, you can always try to play a through ball down the wing, which is my favorite go-to, especially when building up. So you can have that counter-attack threat. That is the 4-2-3-1 in a nutshell. I would say these are very good base tactics to use. I would say from doing some, we've done testing on this as well. For the average player, this really elevates their gameplay. But as I said, try to adjust it to your style. If you want to increase it to the extra 10-20% to your play style, you may say, for example, that this is too attacking for me. You might want to reduce the depth down to 45 or even 40. Or you might find that this is not attacking for you enough, so you may want to use pressure on heavy touch and increase the width and the depth even a bit more, just to be a bit higher up the pitch and to be a bit wider. The key thing is adjusting it to your play style and finding the right balance. But this is generally a good base to start with. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and of course, I'll catch you in the next formation video.